Hello and a very warm welcome to our Create It with LiveCode, Hour of Code. I'm Kevin Miller, LiveCode CEO. This webinar was originally created for Computer Science Education Week. The goal of the week is to raise awareness for the need for more computer scientists. At the heart of the initiative is the Hour of Code, which has the goal of helping millions to experience coding for an hour. Here at LiveCode, we think this is such an important initiative. Our vision is that everyone can create apps, and our whole ethos is focused on empowering you to be able to create. No matter what industry that you're in or you're going to go into, information technology is everywhere. We believe that to get the most out of technology, you need to be able to do more than just consume. You need to be able to create. Today we're going to show you parts from a couple of different lessons from our Create It with LiveCode course. To start out with, we'll show you how to build a mobile app for the very first time. We'll assume that you've never written any code before. We hope you'll follow along and build the app live with us as we go. To do that, download and install the free open source version of LiveCode, available from our website at livecode.com. If you have any questions and you're listening to this webinar live, then please go ahead and type them in at any point as we go along. If you're listening to a recording of the webinar, you'll find very helpful forums on our website that you can go to ask any questions that you might have. After you have downloaded the platform and installed it, head over to livecode.com/hour-of-code. There you'll find the slides for this webinar, and in addition to the slides, you'll find one of the resources that you need in order to build this along with us. At the end of today's webinar, we'll talk some more about what comes after the Hour of Code. The Create It course goes on to show you how to build a dozen of the default apps that ship with your phone, including clock, calculator, maps, and calendar. LiveCode is a multi-platform development environment, and it allows you to deploy to all popular devices, whether that's iOS or Android, phones or tablets, together with Windows, Mac, and Linux desktops, and also server platforms. The course is very much focused around mobile, but the skills that you learn will be transferable to all of the other platforms as well. And once you've learned how to build the apps that we show you in this course, you'll be able to build anything. The course also talks through the business of apps, with experts covering everything from how to do market research to generating strong launch publicity for your app. This session is being recorded, so you can come back, play, pause, and rewind and look at it at your own pace afterwards. Okay, let's get started. We're going to create a Hello World app. Hello World is something of a tradition when you're learning programming for the first time. Our Hello World app is going to look very much like the one that you see on the screen. It looks just like the standard messages app that you will be familiar with. We're going to allow you to enter some text in the box at the bottom, and then transfer that text to display it in a blue bubble. And then we're going to go on and show you how to transfer that text up to the cloud so that other people can see it. Let's get started. First of all, load up LiveCode. Now, it doesn't matter what platform you're running LiveCode on. I'm running it on a Mac, but if you're running it on Windows or on Linux, the steps are going to be very similar. Please make sure that you have LiveCode 7 or later. You'll see a 7 in the splash screen, and that'll tell you that you've got the right version. Okay, this is the LiveCode development environment. Don't worry about what everything does at the moment. I'll orientate you as we go. To start out with, go up to the File menu and choose New Main Stack. I'll explain what cars and stacks are a little bit later on. For the moment, you should see a screen that looks like this. You'll have a window, and that window is essentially like a canvas that you're going to be able to put objects onto. The next step I'm going to take is to resize this window to make it more like the size and shape of the Messages app. In LiveCode, you start out by creating the objects and the user interface of your application, and then you come back and add code afterwards. To create the object, you use the Tools palette, which has all of the common objects that you might want to use. To begin with, I'm going to create the grey header bar that is a familiar sight in many mobile apps. To do that, I'm going to choose the rectangle tool. Now, if you can't see the rectangle tool on your version of LiveCode, just make sure that your tools palette is unfolded. I'm going to take that rectangle tool, and this process will be very familiar to you if you've used Illustrator or Photoshop. I'm just going to drag out the rectangle that's going to be at the top. Next, I'm going to take the Edit tool, which is this one here, and the top right of the tools palette, and I'm going to use that to very carefully resize my header bar. Now, the header bar on a phone, if you've looked at your phone recently, usually has a line that's visible along the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to resize this box so that those lines are just off the screen there. And then I'm going to shrink it up so that it's around about the right size. Now, the next step in this process is to make the header bar a light grey color, which is what we would expect. To do that, I need to open up the Property Inspector. So with this box still selected, you can see the selection handles here. I'm going to go up to the Inspector in the toolbar, and I'm going to click on it. Now here you see properties for this rectangle. Don't worry about what all of these properties do. We'll gradually introduce them as the course goes on. For the moment, what you do need to know is that this rectangle needs to be opaque. At the moment it's transparent and showing through the white background. You can't really see that, but when we apply a color, if we don't make it opaque, then we're not going to be able to see that color. So I'm going to make it opaque here. Next, I'm going to go to this menu that's at the top of the inspector where it says Basic Properties, and I'm going to go down to Colors and Patterns. And this is where I'm going to find the light grey color that we want for this bar. So on the left here we have Patterns, and then on the right here we have Colors, and I want to set the fill color to be a very light grey. So I'm going to click on that box there on the right hand side of Fill. And the grey is really very subtle, it's just a little bit off-white. So we're just going to choose a very subtle grey there. Now your color picker may look different depending on the operating system or even the version of the operating system you have installed. However, you should be able to find a very light grey and just apply that there. And in fact, seeing that there, I'm just going to make it just a little bit more subtle. I'm just going to take that up just another notch. Then I'm going to take the fill border color and just create a subtle fill color for this line here. So we're just going to go up to that one, that box there, the right hand side of text and border. And we're just going to take that grey just down a notch so that it just looks like a subtle grey line. And there we have our header bar for our Messages app. Now if you missed any of those steps, then don't worry. Just go along to the slides and you'll see all of the steps repeated there. This slide shows you where to get the rectangle from, reminds you that you need to make it opaque, and then shows you how to go into the Colors and Patterns menu in the inspector and how to change that fill color. Our next step is to create the footer bar, and to do that we're simply going to copy and paste this bar at the top. I'm going to select that bar there, and I'm simply going to choose Duplicate Object from the Edit menu. So that's just sitting there in the middle of the Edit menu. That's what I did to duplicate that. And then we're going to drag the bar down. In order to be able to drag it, you do have to have the pointer tool selected, the Edit tool on the top right of the tools palette, and you should just be able to click and drag to bring that down. And I'm going to put that box again just so we only see that top line and the other borders are just very slightly off screen. Okay, there we have our footer bar. Now the footer bar in the Messages app has got two objects in it. It has a text box where we can enter in a message and a send button. To create a text box, I'm going to use a field. And that field is the text entry field, which you'll see towards the top of the tools palette. It's just to the right of the label field here. So take that and simply drag, drop to create a text entry field that goes down here. And we'll size that to be the right size for entering a message. And then we need a button, which is going to be our send button. So we're going to take just a regular button, that's the one at the top left just below the mode selecting tools here. I'm going to choose that push button and I'm going to size that. I'm going to put that down there, and with it selected I'm just going to bring that in very slightly. Now we want this button to be a send button and to look like it would look in a mobile messages app. So I'm going to go back up. I have my inspector open. If you've closed your inspector, remember that with the object selected with the pointer tool, you can get the inspector back just by pressing inspector. And I'm going to go up away from colors and patterns and back up to basic properties. So your inspector should look like this. You'll see that you have the button selected here. I'm going to call this button send. So I'm just going to type that into the name field there. And if I click outside that, you'll see that the button takes on that name immediately. Next, I'm going to change the style of the button from being a desktop push button to something transparent. And that just takes away all the edges and the other properties and makes it blend in very nicely there. Then the final thing I'm going to do to make this button look correct is I'm going to go down to the text formatting, which is at the bottom of the menu that you see at the top of the inspector. And I'm going to change the size here up to 18, which is a little bit bigger. And that looks a bit better there on the screen. Again, if you missed any of these steps, then they are repeated in the slides. We can see that our Messages app is really beginning to take shape. Let's go and write our very first piece of code next. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add code to the send button. And just to demonstrate what it's like to write and run code, I'm going to start out by doing something very simple and have that send button just pop up a dialog box that says hello world. Now a little bit later on we'll show you how to have it take the text from the messages field and put it into a blue bubble, but for the moment let's just create this very simple piece of code. Make sure you have the pointer tool selected in the top right hand side of the tools palette here and select the send button. We're now going to open the code editor for that button. So we're going to press code here. Your code editor should look something like this. There should be a blank routine here which says on mouse up, end mouse up. This is a message handler in LiveCode. What that means is that it's a message that gets sent to this object, in this case a button, in response to a particular event happening. In this case, it's when the mouse is pressed and released. Now on mobile platforms, we do have touch messages, but you can use the mouse up message relatively interchangeably. It will still work just fine on mobile. What we want to do is we want to have this button bring up a dialog box that says hello world. So I'm going to type in answer, which is the command for bringing up a dialog box, and then I'm going to open a pair of quotes and I'm going to type in hello world. Now let's pause for a second and just look at that screen. There are the script editor is showing some colorization. The answer has gone to the slightly off yellow color there to show that it's a command that LiveCode has recognized. And our hello world text is currently red. And now if it's red, that means it's incomplete. And at the moment this text is incomplete because I need to put in the second closing quotation. And once I put that in, it changes back to a color to show you that it is indeed complete. When you've added this command in, go up to the top left of the script editor here and press the apply button. We can then close the script editor. Now, the great thing about LiveCode is that everything is live and you don't have to compile your application, you can try it out immediately. This step's really important, so pay attention. You currently have the pointer tool selected, which allows you to select and resize objects and edit them. We want to move the whole program into run mode, which means selecting this tool in the top left here. As soon as we do that, the selection handles disappear. You'll notice that our field becomes active, and it means that I can immediately press the send button here, and it will bring up that dialog box that we just wrote with hello world in it. Now if you need to see that code again, just go over to the slide deck and you can see it there. Answer hello world. Incidentally, if you want to see a list of all of the messages that LiveCode can send to an object, not just mouse up, then go to our API dictionary, which you'll find up here in the toolbar. I'm going to open it up here, and you can see that there's an option on the left here to fold out a language, and if I fold that out, I can choose to see a list of messages, and then I can go ahead and filter that list of messages. So if I type in mouse, for example, then I can see all the other mouse messages that get sent to an object. For example, there's a message sent when the mouse goes down on an object, or when it enters, or when it leaves. I can also have a look at the mobile touch messages. Now these are mapped to mouse messages, so if you're using the mouse messages, they'll work on mobile. But you still need to use the touch messages when you're doing something that's mobile only, like for example, implementing multi-touch. We'll cover more messages as we get deeper into the course later on, so don't worry about learning them all just now. Next up, we're going to enhance this application so that instead of bringing up this dialog with this very fixed hello world, we're going to bring up the text that we type into this message box here that we've created. Now, I noticed that the message box has got a focus border around it, which is fine for desktop, but for mobile we want to get rid of that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go back into the edit mode here, which is this top right object here, and then we're going to select the field, and we're going to go into Inspector. You can incidentally just double click the field with it selected. And I'm just going to take this property here, the focus border, which is just below focusable, just here on the right hand side. And I'm just going to turn that property off. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to give the field a name. It's a good practice in LiveCode to name all of your objects simple, unique and memorable names that you're going to be able to use as you refer to them again and again in the code that you write. I'm going to call this field new message. New message. So I'm just going to type that into the name field there so that our field has that name. Next, I'm going to go and select the send button again, and we're going to go back into the code editor for the send button. And we're going to modify this code. So instead of bringing up this piece of text that we've defined specifically between the quotes, I want it to bring up whatever it is that the user typed into the field. So all I have to do is remove this block of text so that we just have our answer command, and then I'm going to say field, and then I'm going to put in the name of that field. So I'm going to open quotes, and I'm going to type in new message, and again I need to close quotes, and my text will go from being red to blue to show that it's been recognized. I press the apply button here, and then I'm going to close the code editor, and again I'm going to take my program into run mode, so top left of the tool palette here, and I'm going to type in here, wow, this is cool, exclamation mark. And if I press the send button now, what should happen is that my dialog is now bringing up the text that I just typed in there and then into that field. And you'll also notice that the focus border for that field has disappeared, so it looks correct for mobile. If you want to get a clear understanding of what happened when we made those changes, head over to the slides, and we have an exclamation here. So in the first case we had on mouse up when the mouse is clicked, then we have the action, which is this command, the answer command, and then the exact value that we put in, and the end of the routine here. Now LiveCode will translate this command automatically on mobile, so the answer command pops up a system dialog on the desktop, but on the mobile platforms it pops up a native mobile alert dialog, exactly like the one that you would recognize from any other mobile application. Incidentally, LiveCode showed a LiveCode logo in the dialog that we showed on the screen here. However, you can change that to look like your own application. Later, we then changed it so that the answer command, instead of getting this exact value, was being sent the name of a control, or the type of a control, and the name of a control here. And that causes LiveCode to evaluate what it is that it finds within this field, and then to bring that up on the screen. However, we don't just want to display a dialog box. Instead, what we really want to do is we want to be able to type in a message and have it display in the blue message bubble on the top of the screen. So let's go ahead and start to create that. Now, in order to do this, you need to download the blue bubble graphic that we have in the resources. So if you haven't done that already, go over to that URL that I gave you at the start, livecode.com/our-of-code, and then you'll find that we have course materials here. So just below the set of slides that we're doing at the moment, you'll see the messenger bubble there. And you should just be able to right click on that and choose Save the Image. Your browser may have a slightly different option, but there should be a way of saving that image down onto your desktop. When you have that image saved, we're going to import it into LiveCode. That's very easy to do. We're going to go up to the File menu here. We're going to go down to Import as Control, and then we're going to go over to Image File. I'll select that there, and that will bring up the System Standard File dialog, which is going to allow us to import our blue bubble. And I'll just go ahead and select that, and there we are. We have our message bubble. Now the message bubble is a graphic, and I'm going to position that up here where we would expect to see our first message appear. We also need another component. We need some way of displaying text inside our message. So in order to do that, all we need to do is we need to add another object on top of that graphic, and that's going to be a label field. The label field you can see about a third of the way down the tools palette, and it's to the left of the editable field that we used earlier. So I'm going to take that label field and I'm going to drag that field out here, and then I'm going to take the selection handles and size it just to fit neatly within the confines of that bubble. Now you'll see that the inspector has come up with the field selected, assuming that you left that open. If you didn't leave it open, then again just go into inspector to bring it up. And one property that we need to change now is we need to change the don't wrap property, which causes a label field to only display text on one line, which is what a label will do by default. So we do want our text to wrap, which means that we're going to take this property don't wrap, which is on the left hand side towards the middle of the inspector, and we're just going to turn that off. We need to set a few more properties on this field. The next one that we need to set is the name so that we can refer to it easily in code. I'm going to call it message label. Now I've made the name of this object all one word, and it's important that you do the same so that we can refer to it correctly in code. I'm now going to make a couple of more changes just to make this look right. I'm going to go back to this menu at the top of the screen that has properties, and I'm going to go down to colors and patterns because I want to make the text white. So I've got my text color property, which is the first one here, and I want to use the box on the right here to go in and just to choose a white color for that text. So let me go and apply that here. Next up, I want to make a couple of other minor tweaks to the text. So I'm going to go back to that menu, and I'm going to go down to text formatting again at the very bottom, and I'm going to choose to align the text left inside the bubble. So that's just alignment here on the palette, and you can see that the text sprung to the left. And then I'm going to make the size a little bit bigger. It looks a little bit better. So I'm going to take that size up to 12 points. Now later in the course, we'll show you how to group these objects together so that they become a single object, and then how to replicate them and scale them as you type in additional messages. But for the purposes of this course, the next step that we're going to do is we're going to show you how to take the text that you type into this message field and then transfer it into our blue bubble label field up here. So to do that, we're going to go back into the code editor. I'm going to select the send button that we have here. I'm going to go back into code, which is up on the toolbar. And we're going to start off by removing our existing answer command because we're no longer going to be bringing up a dialog box. And instead, I'm going to use the set command to set the text of one field to the text of another field. So I'm going to do set the text of field, open quotes, message label, all one word, close quotes. So this is the field that we just created. We're setting the text of that field to the text of field new message. Again, that's all one word, and again that's in quotes. So text setting here, make sure that your code looks exactly the same as this. So set the text of field message label to the text of field new message. When your code looks exactly like that, go ahead and press the apply button again, and then we're going to go back to our stack here, and I am going to go over to run mode, which is in the top right of our tools palette there. And now when I press the send button, it's going to transfer the message that I typed in up to the message in the blue bubble up there. So if you want to understand exactly what's going on, we can go back to the slides here. Again, we're in our mouse up routine for the send button, so when you're clicking on that button, this message occurs. And we're using the set command to set the text field message label to, and then we're taking the value from another field, and we're essentially making that value travel from one field to another. So the set command is what allows LiveCode to change a property, and you can use the set command to change any property. Every single property that we have been changing so far, like the don't wrap or the name property, can all be changed using the set command. And then the to connector tells us what that particular thing is to be set to. Now incidentally, set is just one of a number of commands that you'll use in LiveCode as you go. And if you want to see some more of those commands, we can open up our API dictionary here. And if you unfold the language option here and then just choose command, make sure that you remove any search term in this box up here that might have been left in. Then you can see a list of various other commands. Now, don't worry, you don't need to memorize all these or indeed anything like all of these. There are a handful of commands that are really popular that let you get quite a sophisticated app built, and we'll introduce those early on as we go through the course. But this is just to give you an idea of some of the things that are here and are available. Now that we've created a message app that displays a message on the screen inside the app, I'm going to show you how to use the cloud to send that message to other people. Cloud computing is simply the process of storing and accessing data and programs across the internet. Software as a service is one type of cloud application. It's an app or app service delivered over the internet, and the iPhone Messages app is a good example of that. We've created a cloud-based internet chat page to demonstrate receiving messages from our app. You could find that web page with the chat app on it at the URL that's displayed on the screen. That's lc1582.on-rev.com/revchat. I'm going to load that page up just now. And if you're still typing that URL in, then it's available there just on the top of my screen still. So navigate over to that page, and you'll see this very simple chat application. Now this chat application has been created using LiveCode and RevIgniter, and we'll come on to how you build these web applications later on in the course. For the moment, I'm going to show you how to send stuff from the app to this screen. First of all, I'm just going to put in, start this up here so that you can see that this is a chat app that we have here. A number of people have been using this already. And I'm going to head over to our slides again. So you'll recognize the first line of code here, which is in the send button, and it's the set the text to field message label to the text to field new message. So that was the line of code that we wrote earlier to display that message on the screen in the blue bubble. We're going to add some code now which sends the message to the internet, and then we're going to be able to see that come up in our browser-based chat application. So let me talk you through what this code does. First of all, we format the message so that it's ready to send to the internet. So what we're doing here is we're putting, now here we have your name, and when you're putting this code in, then replace your name with your own name into your name. So what we've just done there is we've declared a variable, which is a kind of box that you use to store information in. And then we're doing something that's just a little bit more complicated. And we'll come into some of these slightly more complicated functions later on in the course. But for the moment, all you really need to understand is that what this function call is doing here is it's converting the name and message that you're trying to send into a format that's ready to be posted, just in the same way that you would do if you were writing this as a web application. For those of you that are familiar with web application programming, you have to format data in a certain way in order to be able to post it to a form. So the code there, and I recommend that you just go into the slides and copy and paste this section. But the code here says get libURL form data, and we're then sending out the field name, which is name, the variable that contains your name, then the next field name, which is message, and then the text to field new message. So that's the text that the user has just typed in. The next step is to send the message to the Cloud Message app. And in the same way that a postman would deliver a letter, we're using the word post to do that. So all we say is post it to URL, and then it's the URL that I showed you for the chat application. But on the end there's a / and the word set chat, and that additional page is what we've set up on the server to receive the message. Now again, that's something that we'll show you how to do, and we'll show you the code that you need on the server to receive that message at a later point in the Create It with LiveCode course. Finally, we just want to display a message on the screen to show that we've been successful. So we answer, check the cloud for your message. So I'm going to copy and paste this code right out of the slides, and you can do that from the slides that are stored online as well. And head back over to LiveCode and paste them in. Now, one warning here in that I noticed that some of the slides have got curly quotes, which LiveCode won't accept. So I'm going to make sure that those are not curly quotes. Okay, that looks good. So we're still putting the text into this field, but then we're going to go ahead, we're formatting it to send it up to the internet, we're posting it, and we're answering the result. And just in case you hadn't already figured it out looking at the screen, the green lines that start with the double dashes are comments. So they've just been put in the code to help you understand what that code does. That LiveCode doesn't do anything with those comments at all, it just ignores them. Okay, let's apply that. And then we're going to say, hello everyone. Oh, and there's one step that I forgot, and that was, of course, to put my name into the my name variable. So you might want just to go and do that as well. I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to press hello, press send. It says check the cloud for your message. And there it is. Success. Now later on in this course, as we get a little bit more advanced, we'll show you more things. We'll show you how to create the additional bubbles, but we'll also show you how to receive messages as well as just send them. It's actually not that much more complicated than what we've already done. I hope this little bit of coding that you've done so far is making sense. If you're watching this webinar live, then please do type any questions you might have into the chat box. And if you're watching a recording, then do head over to our forums, which you can find on our website, to ask any questions that you might have. I'm going to move on from the coding just now to looking at how to put together the user interface for the calculator application. The calculator application happens a few days into the Create It with LiveCode course, and the purpose of spending a few more minutes on this just now is to get you really comfortable and familiar with the process of laying out a user interface. You've created a user interface already for the chat application, so hopefully producing the calculator application is going to be very easy. Let's get started. So just like for the chat application, we're going to start out by creating a new main stack. So I'm just going to put this stack away for the moment. Save that, and I'm going to close it and create a new main stack. We're going to size and shape this stack to be appropriate for the calculator. Just as we did in the earlier example, we're going to need to create some buttons for our calculator layout. You can see from the slides that we're actually going to need 19 of these buttons to lay out to create this look. And those buttons are going to need to be adjusted so that they look just like the look and feel of the calculator that we're trying to create. So we're going to be using the rectangle button, which is this button here on the tools palette. It's fourth down on the left hand side, and I'm going to start by dragging out 4 of these button objects. I'm now going to select over these objects just by dragging from outside and selecting them, and I'm going to load up the property inspector. Because I've got multiple objects selected, the property inspector now has an align objects option, which is just here in that menu at the top. So if we go in here, what we're going to do is we're going to align these objects so that the top of the objects are all neatly lined up. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to make the width and height of these buttons correct, and so I'm going to go back up to this menu at the top here, and I'm going to go down to size and position. What I want to do is I want to set the width and the height of each of these to 90. So I'm just going to type those width and height numbers in there. I can still move all of these objects in one because they're all selected together. Now that I have the calculator objects the right size, I'm going to go back to the alignment pane just to do a little bit more alignment on them. So if we go back up here to align objects, what I want them to do is I want them to be distributed from edge to edge. So you'll see that there's a few options here, and one of them is distribute, and I want to do that like that. And next up, I'm going to duplicate these objects, and I need 5 sets, so I'm just going to go here and duplicate them. You can also Alt drag or Control drag depending on the platform that you're on. And I'm just using the arrow keys on the keyboard to move these objects. I can see that I have them neatly into alignment. And I'm just going to do the same thing again here. Duplicate this set. And again, I'm just going to use the arrow keys just to neatly make sure that these are lined up. And we need one more row at the bottom here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that as well. And again, just line those up neatly there. Okay, so this is the control panel taking shape for our calculator. Just selected all of these objects, and I'm going to align them neatly so that the left hand side is just sitting on the edge there. And I'm going to make our stack the correct size now to fit all of these. So I'm just bringing the window size in so that it neatly fits up against the edge there. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change a few more things about the look of these buttons. So again, I have them all selected here, and I'm going to go up to icons and border, and I'm going to turn off the 3D effect because we don't want that. I'm going to turn off the border, and I'm going to turn off highlight border as well. And then I'm going to go back up to this menu at the top of the palette, and I'm going to be going down to text formatting here. And in the text formatting pane, I'm going to choose a more suitable font, one of the Arial fonts. Now, you may have a slightly different set of fonts installed on your system, but I'm going to choose this Arial font here. And we need to set the size to be a bit bigger. So I'm just going to go to the size box there and just type in 28, which is more like the size of the calculator that we would expect. Next, I'm going to take these buttons that sit down the right hand side here, and I want to give them an orange fill color to make them look like the calculator. So I'm going to go back to the menu, and I'm going to go down to the colors and patterns, and I'm going to set the fill color, which is the second option here, the right hand side, to the orange color that I'd associate with the calculator. So just choose a suitable shade of orange there. And I'm going to set the highlight color to just a slightly darker shade of orange, so that when those objects are pressed on, they will look correct. So you can see that effect as you press the objects now that we've done that. I'm now going to set the labels for all of these buttons to be correct. So if I go into this button, go back up to Basic Properties, which is the top one in this menu, I'm going to type in all the labels, and if you want to see what labels to use, you'll see them in the slides, or of course in the calculator itself. So I'm just going to select each one and type in the appropriate label. Put in a 0 here, full stop. Divide, multiply, subtract, add. Of course we don't need this object here, so I just selected it and pressed the delete key on the keyboard to get rid of it. And I'm going to select this 0 button to make it wider so that it fits. It's a little bit too wide. That's it there. Put in our equals sign down here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make all of these buttons a subtle grey colour. So I'm just selecting where there isn't a button, just up here. So I get a selection marquee. And I'm just going to drag over all of these objects. And then I'm going to go back to my inspector. And I'm going to go down to Colors and Patterns. And from there I'm going to go to the Fill Color, which is the second one down, right hand side here. And change this background color to just a very subtle grey color. It looks a bit more like the calculator. That's slightly, that looks more like it there. And I'm going to put a border, just a single line border between these objects. So again, I'm just going to go back up here, select over all of these objects now, including the orange ones on the right hand side. And I'm going to go back up to Icons on Border. And I'm going to just choose to turn that border back on. And that's a little bit too wide, so I'm going to go into Border Width here and just turn that to a single width border. So that's very much starting to look like the calculator app, and I'm going to pull that out there just to make that exactly the right size and shape. Looking at the border that we have on these buttons, the actual app uses a grey colour for the borders, so I'm just going to go in here, make sure I'm still on Colors and Patterns in the menu here. I'm going to go to Border Colour and just choose a darker grey just to create those borders. And also, I think the borders alignment can be tightened up a little on this. So I'm just going to select over this set of objects here. I'm just going to make sure that all the borders that we have are single pixels. So having selected them, I'm just going to use the arrow key. And I'm just going to go in sequence just to tighten up the edges so that they look like a single pixel. And again, just select over these, move them down one, and do the same, just to make it look the same as the calculator app. Of course, when you're building your own apps, you can choose your own look and feel, but I'm just doing this to illustrate the process, and hopefully that will be useful to you. And I'm just going to tighten up this border here so that we're exactly the correct width. Okay, so now that we have all of these buttons created, the final part of the calculator user interface that we have to create is this label field at the top, which displays the results of the calculation. The label field is pretty easy to create. We're going to take label, which is the fifth object down on the left-hand side of our tools palette, and we're going to drag drop that out. We want this to fill the whole of the area that we have up here for the calculation, so we're going to size these boxes very neatly so that they hit the edges just spot on. That looks correct. And then we're going to change a couple of the colours, so we still have the colours pane open. Remember, you can get the inspector back by pressing inspector, and you can get colours and patterns back just by choosing them from the menu here. And we're going to change the text colour to be white, because that's what it looks like in the calculator, and the fill colour, the background, to be black. Now, you can't actually see the fill colour yet, which means that we need to go up to Basic Properties and just make sure that we have turned on the opaque property, and as soon as we do that, we can see the fill colour. So again, that's Basic Properties at the top of the menu here, and opaque, which is just in the middle of the palette on the left. Now we're going to go down to the text formatting, which is at the bottom of it, of the menu at the top, and we're going to change our font size here up to 48, and I'm going to choose the same font as I did before, in this case the Arial font, just to display that text. And finally, I'm going to go up to Contents here, which is second from the top of the menu, and I'm going to set our calculator up to 0. And there we have the user interface for the calculator. Everything in LiveCode is persistent, so if we save the calculator with a 0 in this field, it means that when we deploy this to a device, it will come up with a 0 by default when it loads up. Later on in the course, we'll show you how to add code to these objects to do the calculations. It's actually quite simple to do. That concludes our session on the user interface building for this portion of the hour of code. I want to finish up by telling you a little more about what you'll learn in the Create It with LiveCode course. This course runs over 5 months, and it has a live weekly session each week, and that comes together with the slides and learning materials for both that session and all of the other sessions in the week. There's a total of 100 sessions covering over a dozen of the default apps that you already know and are familiar with. The skills that you're going to learn will be mobile focused initially, but they're equally transferable to all the other platforms that LiveCode supports. You'll also get online tech support as you go, and in addition to the technical side, we have a panel of experts who will walk you through the business aspects of creating a successful app business. I'll come back to that and tell you a little bit more about it in a moment. First, I'm going to show you very quickly 3 different sample apps on 3 different platforms. That's half of the total of the 6 platforms that LiveCode supports. You'll be learning skills that you need to build apps just like these, or like any of the thousands of successful apps out there that have been built with LiveCode already. First, a quick look at Midnight Rises. This is an interactive graphic novel, and it was created by the same folk who created the Halo game. The novel has been made to accompany a 3D shooter game that they're also creating for the iPad, and this novel is now available in some of the app stores around the world, with more to follow shortly. It's a rich and beautiful interactive novel, with animations, parallax scrolling, and lots of visual effects. Everything is cloud-based, so as you go through the game, the choices you make in the graphic novel affect what happen in the 3D game, and vice versa. Next, I'll show you WebMerge, a very different sort of app, this time running on Windows. WebMerge lets you export your data to HTML, generating web pages from database files. You can use it to build catalogs, marketing sites, image galleries, and more quickly and easily. WebMerge is web publishing software, and the neat thing is that it works with almost any kind of database or spreadsheet data, including FileMaker Pro, Microsoft Access, and Excel. Web pages can be hosted easily on any web server. And this is an example of a different sort of app, a data-driven app. And LiveCode supports all sorts of different types of data sources, and that's something that we'll teach you in quite a lot of detail as we go through the Create It course. Some of the most complicated LiveCode database-driven apps have up to 60,000 users running on a single site. Finally, let me show you Clarify on the Mac. Clarify is a brand new approach to screenshot software, and it has received lots of critical acclaim. We've used it ourselves to create some of our documentation. This is a beautiful native Mac application that's available on the Mac App Store. And I'll show you very briefly how it works. You can create a new document. I'm going to call this My Documentation. And then it lets you go and take a screenshot, which you can import. So I can choose to capture this calculator application that we worked on earlier. And then go ahead and annotate it, start to add some instructions on how to use it. The software lets you take multiple screenshots, and you can upload those screenshots as PDF or as HTML up to your website, and there are various sharing options built into the app. Now, of course, Rome wasn't built in a day, and if you want to be able to build these sophisticated apps yourself, we're going to take you step by step so that you build up all of the skills that you need in order to be able to do that. We'll start out with finishing off the Hello World app that we'd started earlier on in the video today. We'll show you how to build all of that and communicate in two directions. We'll then finish the calculator app that we built the user interface for, again earlier in the video today, and move on to create a simple notes application that goes ahead and stores your notes up in the cloud. We'll then go on to show you how to build the clock application, which gives you a little bit more experience with using graphics. And then we'll drill into using LiveCode and the internet. We'll give you an introduction to using the HTML browser object to display web content within your app. And then we'll show you how to use the Maps and Google Map API within your app. We'll show you how to build the weather app, and that includes using web services and JSON to pull down information, data-related graphics, implementing a swipe and an animation effect. And then we'll go on to build the stocks application, which also involves multiple web services, XML, a line chart, and we start to drill into things like using device orientation and scaling by the time we get to this stage. We'll then go on and show you how to take full advantage and access to the hardware on your device. You do have full access to it with LiveCode, and including in that we will show you how to build the phone app itself, a basic camera application, a photos application to view the photos, a compass application that uses the accelerometer and pulls in information from that. We'll then go on and talk about how to use databases, and for that we'll produce the reminders application, which uses an SQLite database and a MySQL database. We'll show you how to use alerts to bring up reminders on your screen. We'll show you how to build a simple email application which reads email from a POP server and sends email and saves it in a database. We'll show you how to build the contacts application and the calendar application, which will include a visual scheduler component. We'll then go on to show you how to use the cloud in a bit more detail. We'll drill into more of the architecture for building a more sophisticated version of the cloud application, which includes encryption in the messages application. And then we'll show you how to build some web apps using LiveCode Server. LiveCode is unique in that it lets you use the same language on the server as it does to build the apps in the client. So you can use it to build web pages which are interactive. So we'll show you how to do that. How to do some e-commerce stuff, and how to build a desktop version of the App Store, again just to show you how to build quite a sophisticated app. We'll show you also how to do a mobile version of it. We then move on to talk about the business side of it in this course. Now, the business aspects of the course will run throughout the course, so the question and answer sessions each week will alternate between taking detailed technical question and answer or running a business matters session. And we'll cover things like the key to business planning. That's going to be done by Todd Faberscher. He's a co-founder and CEO of Digital Pomegranate, a company with a lot of experience in creating applications. And Todd himself has more than 25 years experience in this industry. we're going to show you and talk about some of the concepts and the things to think about in creating a great user interface and indeed a great user experience. And Scott Rossi is an expert who has a great deal of experience, 20 years of experience, in fact, in producing some award-winning interfaces. And we'll be bringing him to share some of that wisdom with you. We'll also go into some of the more advanced aspects of database training, what's involved in producing more complicated, richer, data-driven applications. And Trevor DeVore is the expert who's going to come in and talk a bit about that. And he's also the lead at Blue Mango, which is the authors of the Clarify app that I showed you just a little bit earlier. We're also going to bring in Zara, who will be talking about the key to building your brand and getting your app recognized. And Zara is recognized as one of the top 50 women in brand marketing. And she's worked at Johnny Walker, Captain Morgan, Crown Royal, and quite a few others. She mentors and coaches teams about how to capture the hearts and minds of consumers. And she's going to come along and talk about different ways of building a brand, a successful brand around your app. So here's a quick summary. We've got the tech matters. You can see quite a few things there. Everything from objects and different screens, user experience, animation, designing for your customer, fine-tuning and testing, web server and cloud, product management, database coding, security, power and profit, and the ability to create widgets, which are components that have full access to the OS. And those will be coming out in a new version of LiveCode that will be shipping as this course is running. We're also going to be talking about the business aspects, so how to create a business plan and make money, managing and running your own app business, finding and engaging with your own community, customer support, creating and building a brand, doing search engine optimization, public relations, social media, internationalization, and how to build an elevator pitch. So the course is $299 for a limited time only, and you can sign up at livecode.com/create-it-with-livecode. And that includes everything that we've talked about here. It includes, it's a 20-week course with 100 lessons, 100 different polished apps, 20 different polished apps that we'll be building together. It will show you how to integrate the cloud, and we also have a contest where you're going to have an opportunity to pitch your app to the world, to venture capitalists, and a chance to win attendance to LiveCode World, which is our international conference. That'll be happening sometime in the second half of 2015. So there's a real opportunity here. You can get the course, the contest, the cloud, the ability to build the Apple apps, all of the source code, everything that you need in a library to follow along at your own pace, and a LiveCode Indy license, which in itself has a $299 value, all for $299, and that will let you publish to the various different platforms that LiveCode supports. So thank you very much indeed for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and if this webinar is being broadcast live, then we will now take your questions. If not, head over to livecode.com for more information and to sign up for the course. Thank you very much indeed.